It's kind of funny in considering my coverage order for Ad Infinitum. I've definitely had a bit of a distorted order, I guess, when you look at this track. Because as I've said previously, Ad Infinitum was a rather fresh introduction for me when I first started covering them on this channel. And I've always in the mood, to be checking out new groups that are fresh introductions for me. And when it came to Ad Infinitum, I think I'd heard their name before. I don't remember when it was, but it was a recent introduction through another collaboration where I learned about Melissa Bonney specifically, even though her name as well I've heard for a little bit too. Melissa Bonney, my first exposure was with Mortemia, through her collaboration of that artist, if you're not familiar with his name, Norwegian Gothic symphonic metal artist, one-man guy. He hails from Sirenia, very well-known group, and his projects, in terms of being a solo artist, are incredible to listen to. If you've never given Mortemia a listen, I would recommend it. I've covered a pretty broad range of his works on this channel thus far. And his whole model is collaborations with other European talent. Or not just European as well. Maybe say, for example, in the case of the Pandemic Pandemonium sessions, the final track, Adrenalize, Katerina Nix, she's a South American artist. That one, I guess, is a bit differentiated from the others. But with Devastation Bound, my favorite track on the album, Melissa Bonney was a collaborative artist, and that's where I got an introduction for her. So then going forward with that in mind, and that good first impression, I started covering Ad Infinitum. And I was, again, as I've said as well from the get-go, impressed enough with Devastation Bound that I do something I don't often do, in buying all of their albums outright, on faith. And having covered at this point a selection of tracks from Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and all the singles currently released for Chapter 3, I'm very impressed with their talents. And it was a purchase that I made on good faith, obviously. It was well worth my money. But with this video, I said in terms of the considered tracks I'm covering, I'm going by the tracks that have official videos. It's easier for me, by the way, to not do, let's say, as much as I would love to do that, as much as I'm sure there are people who'd be like, oh, you should cover this track and this track, I've listened to the albums in their entirety thus far. I've got a lot of artists I want to recognize on this channel, and so sometimes juggling groups by track counts of what you cover, you can't always cover everything. And so for me, as cool as some of the tracks have been on those releases I've listened to off on my own, let's say, for example, track 3 out of Chapter 1, I like Maleficent, it's a good piece, or Chapter 2 I'm in love with. What's that one? I forget the track on it. It's towards the end. It's the one that mentions the sky on that one, or there's also the Into the Light. Both of those songs are exquisite, but the tracks I covered on this channel from all the albums, in terms of the music video releases, were such pleasurable listens for me. I figured we could have a fun repeat experience here with this one, because it's kind of the same thing, except this isn't really a fresh reaction in that I've listened to the track, so it's a bit differentiated to the other singles of what I've covered, and it's in the wrong order. I didn't realize, because again, when I started covering Ad Infinitum, or Ad Infinitum, as I understand the pronunciation, I think that's correct, it was a fresh introduction, so when I went into Marching on Versailles, I gave a rough estimate of what I could figure out in regards to research. Since then, I published those videos. I have yet, at this point, to publish the other 6. At this point, they'll be published, but, or in terms of the later chapters. Since the first publication series of the Ad Infinitum coverage of what I've offered, I got a lot of comments giving me a lot of insight to this group, much more of a deeper knowledge than I had going in. So I understand that I Am the Storm was one of their foundational works, and Chapter 1, Monarchy, and Ad Infinitum as a band evolved from this. I wish I'd known that this was, because all the other singles have been registered to not Ad Infinitums. This video is on that channel, so I didn't know about it going in. And I look back on it now, I'm like, I wish I'd known, so I could have given a fresh listen to the foundational work. But it's going to be kind of interesting to rewind the clock, I guess, so to speak, in retrospect, reviewing the foundation. Although, as I stated up front, I've already heard this piece, but the video is at least going to offer a fresh introduction. But perhaps for some of you, this will be what I would ideally have done originally with Chapter 1 and giving you a fresh experience with this work as well. Maybe this being the first one I covered on the channel. And this will be a fresh work for you. Maybe you've never heard of Melissa Bonney before. Maybe you've never heard of Ad Infinitum. Maybe you haven't ventured in as deeply as I have into European metal. Most of you who follow my music coverage on this channel, you know how much I revere that space, especially from all the groups I cover, and many I have yet to showcase, and that I'm definitely planning on. And music for me, as I've said, I've loved spotlighting this form of entertainment. It's one of my favorite, in regards to the entertainment lineup of what I cover and focus on this channel. It's always a work that I've wanted to focus more on since the foundation of this channel. And I'm finally bringing that fruition to life. I mean, I really have over 2022, but this is easily going to accelerate in the new year. I'm very happy about that. So, with this track, I hope you get a wonderful addition to Ad Infinitum, and I highly recommend you listen to their other works as well if you're so inspired by this piece. I know going in, this piece is solid. It's a really good metal listen. And it's symphonic metal as well, which is definitely a specified favorite of mine within the metal genre. I absolutely love what Ad Infinitum has done. Again, all three albums are really impressing me. They're just beautiful pieces, beautiful entries in the rock landscape. I absolutely love this group. So grateful I came across them. Thank you to Mortemia for that. I'm going to go ahead and cue up the song I Am the Storm, and you can maybe perhaps hear the song for yourself for the first time, or maybe this is a repeat listen for you. And for some of us, I'm sure this is also a fresh watch to the video. Maybe for those of you who've seen this channel, maybe you took my recommendation and went and listened to Chapter 1, Monarchy in full. You're like, well, I didn't know there was a video. Maybe you're in the same boat as I was. I'm going to go ahead and cue this up. And for those of you, again, maybe this music coverage video is a fresh introduction for you in terms of my formatting. I do try and accommodate viewer taste. So if you're somebody who likes to read along with the piece in regards to lyrical construction, those lyrics are provided for you in the video, and they'll track along with the song as we proceed through it. Alright, without further ado, here we go. I Am the Storm. It really, again, is a beautiful foundational work. If there's a good launching track, it's this one. Great energy from the minute it starts. Oh, this is a bit of a different sound. They sort of revised it for the album. Okay, there's a unique flair here, so I guess it is kind of technically fresh. It's a beautifully filmed video. I like the setting, great atmosphere. You know, subtle strings in the background. It's so good. Great visuals, too. Whoever filmed this has good insight in regards to the shadow use, the lighting. It's a great presentation, it really is. It's so effective. This early cut really is good. I mean, again, there are clear refixings on the album overall, but this is a good first cut. Like, for example, if you haven't heard the original piece, those that transition verses there, more of an emphasized presence among the guitars, I believe, from what I remember. But that string background, that's consistent. And her vocals are as good here as they are on the original piece in the album. I actually kind of like the screaming here a little more, if I'm being honest. Maybe it's because it's Maybe it's just because it's more stressed. I mean, it's relatively, actually, it's mostly consistent, but it just sounds slightly different, like it's more enriched. Yeah, it's such a good structure. I love this piece so much. It's definitely one of the stronger tunes off. But really, everything they have so far off their albums I've loved. But this track is one of the staples. You know, I actually have not bought that song yet, the single version. When I went into well, I need to pre-order the new album, but when I bought all the tracks outright in terms of getting a good tease from Mortemia, I originally thought that the song was released as a single, and so I'm like, well, you know, I'm not going to obviously buy a duplicate. Now, having listened to this, I guess still it is kind of technically a fresh listen. It's just a different variation. Like, I was familiar with the structure going in because I listened to Chapter 1 Monarchy in full. But this is definitely an early cut. It's actually, I think, quite as good as the original, in part. There are key differences. Again, I think some of the emphasis and part of the instrument use is different among variations. Her screaming to me as well here. I need to listen again to Chapter 1 Monarchy, I guess, and compare cuts. Because I think maybe just because the certain instruments were not as emphasized. Those transitional phrases, those were a bit receded here. They weren't as prominent. But it's such a good cut. Again, like I said, in terms of foundational work for an up-and-coming group like Ad Infinitum at the time, this is a great track in terms of establishing identity, in my opinion. Going forward, this is such a... If I compare this to the lineup of their other works, it's very well matched in tone, in scope. Again, it's the original tune, so it's easy to say, like, well, they just, you know, brought the single back for Chapter 1. But if I consider, again, how the group evolved, and I take this backward perspective, now since I'm at Chapter 3, and I'm going back in time here, you know, pre-Chapter 1, considering everything that's come forward, this really is such a good foundational work of their talents and aptitudes as artists, that to see how it's evolved over time is really fascinating. And the video itself is a beautiful compliment. I mean, again, it feels like the lighting is exquisite. I love, by the way, all of these European music videos that take all these nature journeys. It's great. Ad Infinitum has done this quite well. Even Mortemia's videos to a degree have done this as well in some of the backdrops and geographic locations he's featured. D'Artagnan as well, they're German folk rock you've never heard. And I know there's some connection, at least with their frontman, to Melissa Bonney through Feuerschwangs. I know, you D'Artagnan fans, I promised it. I have yet to come across them. Well, I have yet to get covering to the music. I know. In the process of working on it. As promised, I haven't forgotten. I've got a lot of European groups, as I said, and Feuerschwangs is on there somewhere. And now I think even more so, too, because I learned about Melissa Bonney apparently making that go with them. I'm like, you know, hey, I love her so much here on Ad Infinitum. You know, I'd love to hear more there. Anyway, another reason for me to get back up to speed. I have way too many artists I'm looking at. But, I mean, again, there's so much talent across the world, right? You never know where perhaps to end that spotlight. I'll get to Feuerschwangs at some point. But right now we're talking about Ad Infinitum. Well, actually, specifically, again, like I said, the European imagery. Again, it's funny to me how there's such an overlap among different talents. Like, oh, we're going to jump from this location to that location. It's always so exquisite. Like, a little more by comparison than maybe American videos tend to do. Again, I have such a deep respect for Europe in terms of their music library. It really has impressed me. Just the wide variety of artists that they carry. It's really exquisite if you've never ventured into this space as much as I have. You'll thank me, by the way, for taking that recommendation if you go forward with it. This is really, again, a beautiful group. And again, the perspective here of going back in time to see how this group evolved from I Am the Storm as a single, it's really fascinating. But this single, I'm going to go ahead and buy it anyway. because it's like, it's not a repeat. It is a bit of a different variation, but it'll be interesting to listen to these two tracks in comparison. You know, I don't often tend to do that, even in respect to older pieces that have a different bit of a uniqueness and a luster to it that were maybe a building block. You know, I tend to listen more so to the newer works. In this case, I could see listening to both. Each track is quite good. Quite exquisite, in fact. And the video to boot is a beautiful presentation. I think, again, it documents Melissa Bonney's talents exquisitely. She really is such a gifted vocalist. I mean, again, her range, and I've spoken about that before as well, you know, there's a couple groups I listen to, not many in Europe, but like I think in America, there are some talents when it comes to the metal scene of groups led by women that tend to have vocalists who have an extensive range in regards to screaming. And it impresses me every time. Right? A lot of men do it, of course, but when the ladies do it too, it's even more impressive in my opinion. And with Europe, it's been, on occasion, I've come across artists that scream, and Melissa Bonney is one such artist that she's actually, if you consider the entire library, beyond just the tracks I've covered on this channel, there's a lot of tracks that she stresses her range as an artist, and it is impressive to hear. And I can't wait to hear more from her, you know? I mean, again, like I said, I Am the Storm is a great testament to this, as well as really to all their work. It's always a treat covering them, though. So as we wait, you know, it's kind of funny. I'm like, I did debate, like, should I cover this one? Because, again, it's going back in time. But, you know, again, like I said, now having covered this, it makes sense because the single was a bit different. But it is interesting to, again, take this angle of going back in time and considering the foundation of Ad Infinitum as they began and looking back on it now in present day with Chapter 3. Especially as somebody who is admittedly younger in his days of fawning all over another European talent that I just came across. And I have this experience many times, as I will continue to. But Ad Infinitum really has impressed me, and I cannot wait to hear more from them. Again, as they've evolved, and considering this foundation, I'm very impressed with how gifted they are as artists. They truly have God-given talent, in my opinion. What are your guys' thoughts with Ad Infinitum's? If you've never listened to this track before, by the way, or maybe you've never heard Ad Infinitum before at all, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Maybe you're a longtime fan. Which track for you, in terms of the variation between the Chapter 1 Monarchy issue and this original single, which variation is your favorite, right? And are you as fascinated by the evolution of this group perhaps as I am? Maybe this is, again, more so just like an early honeymoon type experience, but I'm very impressed, again, considering that foundation. I find it incredible to see, you know, that journey. It adds such a unique perspective to the song. Let me know, even just at the time that this track released, right? In present day, it has a whole new quality to it. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the piece, should you wish to disclose your opinions on it, and perhaps your angle as well from how you approach this song. Again, I'm very impressed, and I'm always looking forward to covering more, you know, in the way of Ad Infinitum. I can't wait as Chapter 3 evolves more specifically. I'm definitely looking forward to whenever another single comes out from that, and I will be immediately on point with it. I love this group. I'm so happy I came across them. They're extremely talented. I Am the Storm, again, it's an original form. It's just as exquisite as the original track that came in, and I see why, again, Ad Infinitum came about in particular because of this piece. It really speaks for talents well, and it's such a good foundational work. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.